Thank you, Mr. Lawi. So first and foremost, this is week 12 for us in service. This is our week 12, so we've got about 2 more weeks to go. 2 more weeks to go. By week 14, that would be the end of lecture, as well as yes, all the notes and things will be uploaded and be finished off by week 14. So as we are approaching very near to completion of this course, I would like to start off by just updating us on particularly assessment task that will allow us to pass this course. So it is important that we know where we are, and I know you students know yourselves better than I do and where you are at with your task. However, let's start off with assessment task 3, which is the reflective discussion that is already due in week 4. Currently, we've got 31 pieces and that are going for marking very shortly. We have part B that will be due in week 14. Okay, take note, week 14 is your final reflective discussion that is part of assessment task 3. So if you haven't done part A, do put effort to do it. I think all the Dropbox have been closed now, especially for this very overdue assessment task. But gear up and be prepared that by the end of week 14, which is end of lecture, you have your last part B reflective discussion, and this is part of assessment task 3. Assessment task 1, essay. Assessment task 1, essay. To date, we have 29. We have 29 submission. We are expecting 31. Maybe some people have dropped off along the way. We still need a few more. So if you know of friends who did not submit yet, or if you are one of them, make effort to submit, but you will have to write for these people who did not submit assessment task 1 yet. You will have to write and explain the delay of your submission. Otherwise, you will be penalized and some marks will be deducted. And if again the marks are low, then the likely chances is the essay mark will drop, maybe will drop a lot for you as an individual. So prefer some courtesy that you write and explain the reason why you did not submit assessment task 1. Attach it with your assessment task 1 and submit, or email it to me and then submit assessment task 1. I hope this is clear. For assessment task 2, I've just logged into Moodle before I come here. To date, part 2 or part A of assessment task 2, which is the creation of the formative assessment, to date, we only have 2 submissions. Therefore, I don't see the reason why I should go ahead and discuss summative assessment. That we now, if this is week 12, that means, as professionals, we all know, that means that we are 3 weeks overdue. And yet, very few people are communicating the reason to the late delay and the delay of the submission of the formative assessment task. However, the mass majority did not communicate, and I think that is not good. As professionals, we communicate whenever things don't happen according to schedule. So to date, we only have part A, formative assessment of assessment task 2. We only have 2 submissions. And only one or two people communicated the difficulty, and I've gone back to them. Otherwise, I have no idea. Where this, I will say nearly 30 people. I don't know the reasons of their late submission, because that communication hasn't been done to me. Okay, part B of assessment task 2, which is the creation of the formative assessment, will be due in week 13. So that is next week. Okay. And there may be reasons, and some reasons may be good, but there is no communication. And then that, as teachers, you will also, I mean, it's a human nature. When you don't communicate and then you have delayed of things, you are not happy. And of course, there are assessment policies in place that very overdue assessment will get marks deducted. Okay, so I'm just letting you know this, that we have assessment policies that we have in place. So yes, so please communicate or make effort to submit any submissions that assessment tasks that you haven't submitted. Okay, so that is just to bring those to our attention, because at the moment at week 12 now, it is very clear. It is very clear with very few submissions and as well unexplained submission, people not submitting. It will delay us. It will delay us, and I am sure that I will still receive submissions of assessment tasks with lots of maybe with many long emails that will need Mrs. Simo to read, and I know people will be going through DP Academy and even the principal, so that Mrs. Simo will have to mark assessment tasks. Okay, and as I've said earlier, with this very big number of people not submitting on date, it looks like we will have submissions, will be still coming up to August, July or August. As I've previously mentioned with the first course, we have submission up to March this year. Okay, so please teachers, and I know some are principals, I know that you have workload, yes, but as soon as you've made the agreement to be a student, you also have your study commitments, and time management matters a lot. Okay, so that's the first one. I don't really like to spend a lot of time talking. I'm also done with the flu, but I will. So that's the first part of our our meeting this afternoon, just to go through the assessment task. And yes, we have 3 assessment tasks. So as you look through your book and your Moodle shell, check that you have submitted things. Otherwise, you might also lose mark. We also have people who've gone missing in action again. We have a few people who've gone missing in action for quite a long, many number of days. We have even one has gone missing from our Moodle page for 21 days. And remember that we can also monitor your attendance through Moodle. Some people did not log in for the last 21 days, but are our student. And we also have 21, we have ranging from 15 to 21 days. So if you are one of them and you are listening now, maybe that attitude should, you should consider reflecting on it, because that also shows, yes, it's just like you being absent from your classroom. So maybe these are some of the things that contributes to the delay of our assessment task. Okay, so that's that one there. I will go through, I will briefly go through. I will come back in week 14 here to do my last, to do our last lecture. So today is week 12, I will be gone, and I mean, not I'll be gone where, but I will come back for our Zoom in week 14. So anything you want to know, ask now. Okay, so I will slowly I'll go through the formative assessment task, which will be, summative assessment task, which will be due in week 13, not week 14, week 13. Okay, so I think every step is just straightforward. We know that summative assessment is an assessment that we teachers assess things that we've taught over a long period of time. It's the end of term test, and of semester 1 test and of year test. So those are our summative assessment. We assess what we've taught. So for us to get ourselves prepared for our formative assessment creation, that will be submitted by end of or midnight Sunday night next week. We have 3 parts that we are to do to get ourselves or to give ourselves some marks. Part 1 is the test paper planning. Part 2 is the test development, and part 3 is the development of answer and marking, and mark schemes or marking rubrics. So in your assessment task, part B for the summative assessment, these 3 parts are the parts that we need to consider and ensure that we do carry out and then submit a task for marking. Okay, so for test 1, I have also uploaded a sample, just a sample that will give us some guides to what to do. So for test planning, what are we expected to do? In our test planning, which is a part 1 test planning, we are to identify our language strand, and usually we would identify summative assessment. Usually we would use reading, writing, grammar, reading, writing, grammar, and writing. What was I saying? Okay, reading comprehension, grammar, and writing. So those are the 3 strands that we will we traditionally have used a lot. But for this one, we will assess the strands that we have studied a lot last year already for our literacy teaching and learning. Therefore, I am expecting you to assess experience with the topic, which is which has the listening, and speaking. Okay, so this test paper will bring to our attention the strands that are listening and speaking. And for this one, I am wanting to see you people assess some maybe sounds or spelling, because for spelling, we read the words and the students listen to the sounds we make. Then they will write the spelling correctly. That is listening and speaking. So for your traditional, for your and my and our traditional summative assessment, particularly in regards to language, we don't usually have spelling. Maybe for some schools, maybe you've done it, but for myself, I remember I haven't done it much. For our summative assessment now, please take into account the strand as I've mentioned. Listening and speaking is where I want to see you putting some activities or assessment activities that will assess sounds, maybe syllables, maybe you are saying the word and the students maybe silently clap and then write it down that they've heard 2 syllables in that word. Okay, and usually we would do these ones first, and then the students will continue with the reading comprehension. They will continue maybe section C on the grammar. Then they will continue on to writing, which is usually one of the texts that we want to assess. So that is from Mrs. Simo, because last year we have spent quite a number of weeks looking at phonemes, phonics, phonological awareness. Okay, all of those are sounds. So you either say the words, they ask the students to identify how many syllables, or you make a small list of spelling, you say it, and the students will write the spelling. Yes.
Simo, one question. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, all good.
About the 4 things you just mentioned: reading comprehension, language study, writing, and you mentioned something about phonics to be. How about what about if we are writing, we are planning the summative assessment for the grade 6?
Yes.
Does that have to be the same?
Oh yes, oh yes. It can be. Okay, because even students in class 6, you spend time, remember, okay, to answer Stephen's question as well as all of us, remember that all these things are ongoing teaching and learning that we are doing. If we teach all of this, then it is just wise to assess what we've taught. Why do we have to leave out phonics, spelling, phonological exercises in a summative assessment? You will be with the students. So you give 5 minutes to run your phonology, phonics, and that's spelling, and maybe we've got syllables. You can do that the first 5 minutes, and then give the next remaining hours of the assessment for them to complete the reading comprehension, the grammar, and the writing. You assess what, yes, sorry, Stephen, go ahead.
Thank you. I said thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So we assess what we teach. What's the point of spending too many hours? And of course, we've spent like 15 minutes every morning to do our sounds. We can just assess those as well.
Okay. Thank you for this. Sorry for interruption.
No, this is what this Zoom is for. Thank you so much, Stephen. So the first one I'm just highlighting here, identify the language strand, and I am asking all assessment to have included in this listening and speaking, because I have spent not a lot of time, but part of our course last year to look at sounds, to look at oral language development, and those are some parts of the oral language development. Okay, then we have identify related learning outcomes from the language syllabus. And of course, when we do summative assessment, we look at the strand learning outcome. When we do formative assessment, we look at the substrand. So we call substrand skills and strategies, production, text and context. But for this one, we only pick up our learning outcome from the strand at the grade level. So if you are looking at reading, you get reading. If you are looking at reading and your class is class 4, pick up the reading learning outcome for class 4. It's usually on top of the indicators and learning substrand learning outcomes. Okay, then you choose the test items that you will use. So it may be multiple choice, or it may be short answers, or filling in, or rewriting. Choose your assessment items. Put all the above in a table form and unpack learning outcome, as we have done for the formative assessment. Okay, so for example, read with understanding. Read with understanding and pleasure a variety of written text such as fiction and non-fiction. So of course, one of the verbs that we will expect to happen would be reading. We would also expect them to interpret, because we will create questions that would allow students to interpret. We would also maybe have another verb for discuss. And of course, this is when they will have to discuss their opinion as to why they support or answer that particular question, a yes and a no. So pull out the verbs, because when I read, for example, read with understanding and pleasure a variety of written text, it only says read. But what are some of the assessment verbs or Bloom's taxonomy verbs that will allow us to measure that understanding? They will need to read, they will need to discuss, they will need to identify, maybe they will need to analyze, maybe they will need to interpret. So all those verbs you need to unpack, meaning that you look at the strand learning outcome, then you think of the verbs that you will need to see in action, so that you can be able to mark students' understanding. Okay, so I hope that helps. So then you've got to do the unpacking. Remember that they've got to be specific, measurable, and they've got to be achievable. And those are, of course, those action verbs will allow us to see if students we can measure their achievements. And time bound, as we all know, SMART. Okay, plan and develop your test blueprint in 3 different ways. So for this assessment task, you are to develop in a 1-way, 2-way, and 3-way. And I have provided as well, I have provided samples of this one. This 1-way, 2-way, and 3-way of developing the blueprint on Moodle. So you might have seen that. And for each one, under each one, write a very short summary, a brief summary. If we have 2 lines or 3 lines, that is okay, that is acceptable. Okay. Then we move to part 2. So that's part 1. Part 1's over. Then we move to part 2. Part 2 is when we do the test development. So what are some requirements? And I have uploaded this. They're very simple. Develop your test paper based on the information you have prepared in your planning in part 1. Some resources that you will need to consult when planning this, primary school language syllabus, teacher's guide. And at this point, I must apologize that I myself still can't access year 1, year 2, and year 3 teacher's guide and pupils book. Okay, the reason why we have to consult these resources, because inside these resources, we have texts that are already at the grade level. For example, if you want to prepare your assessment for a class 3, then look at the types of stories in class 3. And then you can pick up, or you can write up another text, but it's got to be very close to what you see in the teacher's guide, not something at a class 1 level, not something at a class 6 level. So your reading text for reading comprehension, your teacher's guide or the pupil's book, they will also have stories in them. They will guide you on the level of the text that you will provide for the reading comprehension. So that is why we are encouraged to at least consult these resources when we are developing. They already give us the benchmark, the national benchmark of that level of text difficulty. And the students, as we teach on a daily basis, we expose students to these types of text. And when we are writing summative assessment, we expect to assess national benchmarks. So that is the reason why we need to consult these books. So that's to do with part 2. Part 3, we are to prepare the answer and the marking scheme or the marking rubric. Okay. For here, we are encouraged to write our answers to the test questions that we have developed. And as well, we are to develop marking rubrics. And for marking rubrics, this is particularly important for writing. Okay. So when we are to mark, sometimes when we are too busy and we see too many spelling, and then we say, oh, this work is totally, not good. Give it a 5 out of 10. But what about the ideas that are presented in the writing? Okay, so when we have a marking rubric, it helps us being fair, that we are considering the content presentation or the students' ideas, whether they are presented in a coherent manner, in a very logical manner, and whether the sentences are really good. So we give marks to all of these ones here in a marking rubric. Therefore, it is important for writing. I know, and I've been one of the teachers on the ground for a long time. Sometimes we tend to just read the writing and we just mark. No, to be fair, marking, we have to develop a marking schedule or marking rubric, marking criteria, in order to help us to do the marking of the writing. Okay, when you have finished all of these things here, then you make sure that you compile all this and submit it as part B of your assessment, summative assessment or assessment task 2. Okay, so I will just briefly go through one way. For one way, we have For a one-way blueprint, we only have to indicate the content area, or for language exams, we only consider some strands. Okay, and for this example you are seeing now, we have reading comprehension, we have writing, and then we have the language study, which is the grammar. But for you now, for this course, we are emphasizing that we include listening and speaking at the top. So it happens first, listening and speaking. Of course, listening and speaking, because we will be assessing spelling. Remember that for our when we are planning exams, we are also giving exams regarding the amount of time we have used during our teaching time. Therefore, if we have spent a lot of time, if you can recall to our literacy balance timetable, we've spent around 30 minutes on experience with and the language of the topic. As of last year, we've broken down that 30 minutes and given 15 minutes to listening and speaking, dealing with sounds of the English language, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, phonics, and all of those. So we have spent the 30 minutes on experience with and the language of the topic. Reading comprehension gets a good number of minutes, writing as well, and grammar gets also some number of minutes. So for the distribution of the percentage, for the weighting, for the distribution of the weighting also goes in line with the duration that we've spent during teaching and learning. So I will not tell you what percentage to do. This is an assessment. I understand that as professionals, and give you the opportunities to put into practice the weighting. But I am highlighting here that listening and speaking will come in because we have spent good time as well in our last year course to do this. So include listening and speaking. You will decide how many percentage it will go. It will get the weighting for listening and speaking for a few of the little activities. Of course, it's not going to be many, but we assess. Then reading and comprehension is usually also huge. So for this example, it is given 50%, 25% and 25%, giving a weighting of 100%. Okay, so you will do that one for, yes, you will add in. So for all of the three, for all three ways of blueprint, I am expecting to see you add in listening and speaking. Okay, and then you will do your distribution. Okay, let's go to what's this? Three-way blueprint. For three-way blueprint, let me just also highlight here that the language assessment planning and blueprint may differ a little bit from some of our expert knowledge on a blueprint, particularly with other subjects where you will have to count the total number of lessons spent on a topic, and then you do some calculations. For reading, everything is done, you know, everything happens one go every day. So we always have listening and speaking, reading, writing, language study. We do that every day. So the planning of a language blueprint may not be and will not necessarily be like other ways of planning blueprint for other subjects. So for us, for the three-way blueprint, we have reading comprehension as I've stated here. With a three-way blueprint, we will see that it is more detailed in that it has the content areas and the topics, the questions or the items, types of assessment items that we are expected for students to engage in during our exam. And we have our knowledge, that's the Bloom's taxonomy level or the cognitive level, process level. We have knowledge, comprehension, application, and then we have total number of items, total marks and weighting. And then we also have the split up. For example, for reading comprehension, we have multiple choice happening. The part 2 of it has a short answers where you ask question and the students are expected to maybe interpret a bit of the story and answer those questions. And then we have part 3, which is filling in exercise. So all of this, the details have already, they're in the previous pages that I don't want to go through now. But what I want to highlight here is, of course, you have your number of questions, total number of questions at the bottom. Then you have your marks. So 5 in knowledge gives you 7 marks, 36 for comprehension, 36 little items, and gives you a mark of 43. And then as professional teachers, we know for us to get the 46 weighting, we get the marks, 10 gives us 30. 30 times 30 over 65, that's the total marks, times 100 over 1, after gives us 46.1 something, and then it gives you a weighting of 46%. Okay, I think that is okay. And as professionals, we know that we decide the total number of items. For this example, we've used 46 as the total number of items for the summative assessment, end of term test. But usually, I think a good number would be numbers rounding off with 0, for example, 50. Okay, numbers maybe 50 is a good example, good, or 45. 46, 41, 43, not really good. And we all know that. Okay, then we have the question around, but Mrs. Simo, how do you get the 11%? Sorry. So for this one here, it is just, yes?
Mrs. Simo, sorry. Before we go down to those 5 to 11% analysis, can you come in again in this part here about the distribution of total marks and the distribution of total marks in the application, comprehension, and knowledge? Is there any calculations to be needed here, or we decide ourselves for the distribution of these totals?
Okay, for these ones here, for the distributions of totals here, we give the total number of, for example, we start off by asking, telling ourselves, well, how many comprehension questions do we want to give? Okay, as I've said, because we're just teaching across, so we do the calculation only towards the weighting, the marks to get the weighting. But we decide on the number of items, for example, for multiple choice. For multiple choice, we are giving multiple choice to reading comprehension at the knowledge level, and also we are giving multiple choice for comprehension at the comprehension level, and we also give 3 multiple choice. So we decide multiple choice at the different level of blooms to give us the total mark. Okay, so to answer Stephen's question, we only do the calculation at the weighting part. We decide how many number of items per each assessment item. Okay, and then just to add on to this, because we've learned about inclusive classrooms. Let me just say it this way. It means that everyone shares a classroom. There may be people that are very low level, they may be average level, and you may have a natural, very clever boy or girl in your classroom. Therefore, we want assessment tasks, summative assessment tasks, to have the knowledge, which is the lowest level of the cognitive thinking. So we've got knowledge, then we've got comprehension, we've got application, we've got analyze, and we've got evaluation, and we've got creating. For this one, for this exam sample for assessment, I would like you to line up all those cognitive levels up as here. I did not include analyzing here, and I did not include what's this? I did not include evaluation and creating or creation. But for you, we want you to include all of those, okay? Because if every student in your class has 100%, then that means that our test is too easy maybe. And as well, it helps us to know, and it shows us that we have not given a good challenge question to our gifted and talented student in the classroom. Okay, if 50% gets 100%, or if 50% of the student or half the class get 100%, then it may mean that our questions are falling maybe too much on the knowledge. So please, in this assessment task, it will be recorded and gone out, and you can share this recording, that for the cognitive level, can we include 3 other levels that are not in this part here? So this assessment task, I have told you now in this Zoom meeting that there will be some additions that I did not add in. The first one I've told you earlier is the listening and speaking strand, which you will have to include when you are creating the test planning, your desk development, and that marking. Now I am also informing all of you that when I get to see 1 way, 2 way, and not 1 way is okay, but 2 way, for 2 way and 3 way, I would like to see the weighting you give for the weighting, as well as the distribution of items for the other 3 remaining levels of blooms that are not here. And they are namely analyzing, evaluating, and creating. Okay, one good example of creating is the creating part of this assessment task. We may find it in the writing, where we allow the students to create a writing or to write. Okay, for example, you just ask them to recount an exciting part of their life, and if it's a recount, then when they're creating, we're expecting them to do the structure of their recount in the same way that we've taught them the structure of recount in the classroom. Okay, so that is an example of creating. So if I don't see creating in the multiple choice, in the short answers, in the filling in the close exercise, in the writing, the creating part will come at the creation of the text type that you will give. I hope that is clear. Okay, so have I answered your question, Stephen?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now let's go down to the 5 to 11%. Okay, we have something at the bottom of the 3-way blueprint where it says recall of knowledge 5 to 11%. Okay, for this one, that 5 is just that 5 is just really reflecting the number you have up there. On the knowledge, you see the 5 in a bracket. That's the same 5 that's taken down here, and it's only telling us that those 5 items give us 11%. And then we have the 36 there. The 36 up there gives us the percentage of 78.
Can you come again? Simo, can you start again?
The number 5, you see 5, yes, the 5 to 11. The number 5 is just the number 5 from the total of the knowledge. And then that knowledge, the recall of knowledge, the number of items and the marks will give us a weighting of 11%. I will allow you to go around and have some breakthrough here. Then we see comprehension. When we come down comprehension, go to our comprehension on the table. When we come down, we have 36 sitting there. So it's the same 36 comes down here. And then we are now trying to work out that 36 and the mark 43 should give us a weighting of 78%. And then we have the total of items. The total of items in our exam paper, we have 46. Okay, and of course, if every 46 and all of the things are correct for the 46, we will have a weighting of 100%. Okay, so there is no really, there's no really complicated calculations here. We're just trying to know that our recall questions will give us what's the percentage of the weighting. Okay, and the comprehension, if we have some comprehensions, what's the percentage of the weighting? And for us, we will have knowledge, comprehension, application, analyzing, evaluating, and creation, and then we will creating, and we will have some percentage there. But of course, when everything is correct, it will be 100%. We're just doing the distribution of percentage and the cognitive level or the Bloom's level there. Okay, so for example, if you get 36 out of or 7 out 36 out of the marks is let's say 7 out of 65. So the marks, I'm just giving an example of the working out here, but I'd really love you people to try and think around it and see how we get this. So we get 7 marks for knowledge, multiply by 100, which is the percent, divided by 65, then we get 11%. Okay, so it tells us that with the 5 items on knowledge, we get the marks, we use the marks to get the weighting, and that's when we get our 11%. Okay, and I know many of us, we are all very equipped with Bloom's, and we are very equipped with Blueprint, and I believe I will see some really good work. When we come down to, not Ale, but then we get down to still at the far end of the weighting, we get our total marks for part 1, which is reading comprehension, 30. 30 multiplied by 100 divided by 65 gives us 46.1. And then it gives us, we round off to 46%. Then when we come down to language usage or the grammar, we've got 25, the marks are 25. 25 multiplied by 100 divided by 65, we have 38.4 for that one. When you go to work it out, you will see it. That's where you get. Then you ask a question. But Mrs. Simo, now you say that it's 38. I'm sorry for my voice. Now you say it's 38, and why is it 39 on that weighting table? If you are looking at the table with me, then we go down to the writing. The weighting is 15%. Then we need to total our weighting too. Simple calculation. So when we total our weighting, we should get to 100%. However, if we get 46 plus 38 plus 15, we get 99%. And so we award one more to 38, then it gives us that 39 sitting on the paper. Then we go 46% plus 39% plus 15%, then gives us 100%. Now, these are very simple steps, but just know that when you do the total weighting of all sections, all the total weighting should at least get to 100%, so that we know that 65 total mark. If everyone is right, then you get 100%. Yes? Okay. So that's about it for this summative assessment, which I am particularly coming here today to help us understand these 3 important steps. There are already all the readings and handouts that I've uploaded, but I'm just coming here to go through the 3 little steps that we need to do and prepare so that we can submit our assessment task and gain full mark so that we can pass this course. Otherwise, that's about it. I just brought some things here, but I will also let you know that I have done some new additions again to the module, particularly on week 8, week 9. So week 9, not week 10 and 11, but for week 9, not week 8, sorry, not week 8, but for week 9, if you go in, you will see that I have uploaded the writing of the exam. It's just a lecture, PowerPoint presentation. So the writing of the exam gives us some important things that we need to consider when we are writing our summative. So one thing to consider is the writing of the questions. Okay. I will not say everything here, but please go and download writing of the exams just to help you when you are creating your summative assessment. The formative no come yet. Okay, so writing of the questions must be factual, questions must be clear. Okay, marks allocated needed to be indicated, and this we all know as teachers. When you write at the end of the question, or maybe you created an exam paper and then you roll it off, you make sure you indicate the number, the mark that the students will likely to get. Okay, don't just write so many questions, you decide the mark is hiding in on your table and the students did not get to see the mark. The mark will allow students to make effort to answer the question. If the question was 2 marks, then they need to know and they will put extra effort. If you did not put marks, they may just write 1 word and then you will say, but this you should answer, but you don't indicate the marks. Okay, so marks must be indicated, and please also make sure that the marks are related to the time needed. If the student need to read the text again to identify the clue that they need to answer the question, make sure you give maybe 2 marks. Okay, for example, what is the title of the story? Title will only get 1 mark because they just go straight and find it. But if you add a question where the answer is not clearly stated there, they need to look for clues, or maybe they need to use the prior knowledge so that they can make link and find the answer. That may need 2 marks. Okay, make sure that the choices of questions you are using are of the similar difficulty. Not one is very easy, then suddenly one is very hard. Okay, make sure you vary your questions from easy to moderate to difficult. Okay, after that, after you're writing the question, putting the question, that's the next little subtitle I put in the
Simo.
Yes.
Simo, okay. In relation to marks that you have mentioned.
Yes.
In relation to marks that you have mentioned, I've seen teachers marking students, especially the writings and other. They've given such marks as half marks, 0.5. Are we encouraged to something like this?
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for that answer. For writing your marking rubric, your marking criteria will indicate. When we don't give marking criteria, that's when we award half mark here and there. For language marking, maybe for other subject, but for language marking, 0.5 is not acceptable and shouldn't be used. Shouldn't be used. So your marking, yes, it should be whole marks. Yes, it should be all marks. So avoid half marks. Okay, simple as that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next little subtitle on the PowerPoint slide that I gave was putting the question. Okay, choosing the verb. And this is very important. When you are writing an exam paper, try not to be fancy with your vocabulary. Talk straight. Try not to be too fancy with your vocabulary. Of course, we know that for the cognitive level of thinking, we have the Bloom's taxonomy. And we should be using those verbs already with the activities we are teaching. For example, if you use identify already during teaching and learning, then that would be one verb that you could use. Or if you use write. But if you use construct construct a story, but you haven't used construct in your teaching, then you fail the students. So choose the verb. Of course, the verb must vary in level of difficulty, but let's assume that the verb we've used during, during our teaching and learning. Okay, the verbs need to be related to the verbs used in the language syllabus. If we don't see verbs such as construct in the language syllabus, then don't use it. Okay, for us, for literacy, teaching and learning of literacy and assessment of literacy, the language syllabus is our government, is our guide. We get the verbs in there and we use it during our teaching and learning. And when we assess, we use those verbs in our assessment. Okay, the verb will dictate the level of difficulty. If you are planning for a knowledge, then use identify, label, list. Okay, list the name of characters in the story. If you are on comprehension or application, then go to the verbs at those sections or at those levels of cognitive process and pull them out and use them during in your question. Okay, because if you use identify and you are awarding 2 marks and you are saying this is comprehension, then that may not be right. So again, when we are doing this summative creation of exam, please let's consult our Bloom's level of taxonomy. I will also, after this presentation, I will also go and upload some samples of questions that are already at the Bloom's different levels of taxonomy, or different levels of Bloom's taxonomy. Again, it will be at week 9. Then you can consult those ones. Consult these recent uploads or the new uploads and use the right verb. Okay. The next one I've put here. Okay, let me just give you some examples of remembering or the knowledge. List the main events in the story. Okay. Write a list of characters in the story or name the characters in the story. Those at a very low level. Okay. So I will you can go to this handout and see the things that I've mentioned here. And then the other one is the types of question. The types of question we write during our when we are creating our summative assessment. We can have alternative response. We need to vary. Okay, we need to vary our types of questions or our types of assessment items. We have completion or short answers that I have highlighted earlier. We have matching. We can use matching. And again, maybe depending on the level, where will matching come? Will matching come in applying? Will matching come as a comprehension, or will your matching activities fit the knowledge? Then we have multiple choice, and then we have an essay. So some types of questions that we can include in our language summative assessment. And we also have filling in, sentence structure or sentence writing, rewriting. And then we also need to, when we are writing, of course, we've talked about this earlier, that it is important we create our marking rubric or marking criteria whilst we are writing the exam. Okay, this is mainly because it can give you and it can make you identify some of these important things. So the marking criteria and the marking rubric must be developed before the students do that assessment. These are a few purposes of what a marking rubric or marking criteria does. It gives the basis for marking. It ensures questions are answerable. Okay, so as you have written the paper, now that you sit and try and answer the questions that you have created, it can indicate, it can make you see, oh no, I have created this question, but this answer will be the same as the question earlier. then you can adjust that. Or but I've created this question, but it doesn't seem that there is an answer to this question in this text. So it ensures that questions are either answerable or are repeated answers. That is why marking rubric or marking criteria is important. It ensures consistent of marking, as I've mentioned earlier. Sometimes when we then create a recount marking criteria, then we think sometimes because we're too busy, we think too many spelling errors, and then we drop a lot of mark for the poor student. So to ensure consistent of marking, it is important that we have a marking criteria for all exams that we have prepared. And I believe, and I know some people are already involved in exam writing, and these will be just reminders. Provide examples of answers. Okay, for example, some short answers can have two answers to the same question. So for you having to think around the answers before you give the students the paper, it can help you identify these things. Okay, and when we are preparing our marking criteria, and as well as our exam papers, I've mentioned earlier, and Stephen asked the question, that it is very important that we allocate marks at the end of each question, so students know the amount of effort they need to put into answering our questions. Okay, and yeah, that's about it for this. This is the new one. This is a lecture PowerPoint that I have just uploaded this morning before I came here. So make sure you go back to Moodle. That's why I'm a bit worried for people who've gone for 7 days, 8 days, 10 days out of Moodle and did not log in at all. Remember that things can be uploaded in again during the week, just to enhance your learning. So this is the title of the file is Writing the Exam. You should see it on Moodle, and it will assist you a bit, if not a lot, when you are creating your summative assessment. Okay, so yes, I think that's about it. It's already past 1 o'clock. Because I won't be here, and I'll be here only in week 14, just to tell you, by week 14, when I come back Friday, week 14, I will say, everybody, if you are all listening, this is week 14, it's the end of everything. That's what I'll do in week 14. So whilst I am here with you, I will share with you a little bit about special education or students with special need, or can be regarded sometimes as inclusive. And that is this is for week 10, last week already, and this week, week 11. Okay, so I have uploaded already a lot of readings and videos. I believe you have downloaded and are watching and are already worried about all the learners in your classroom. I will not make mention of everything that I have uploaded, because we are all very good students. We are too busy, and we also read our notes. Please do read your notes and take notes of some important things that you can apply in your classroom. For this time, I'll try, I know it's past 1 o'clock, but I'll try my best to just go through a PowerPoint that I have uploaded on Moodle. Yes, last week. So the lecture is titled Supporting Students with Special Need. Okay, and I have picked up just a few. So first one here that I want to draw our attention to is vision impairment. And this is particularly with albinism. Okay, this is particularly with albinism. Albinos, and I know that many of our islands have albinos, and whether we are accommodating this group of students in our classroom or maybe not, I want to share a little bit around how, and some of the basic things that you can do with your with an albinism, or with students with albinism, or one albino in your class, or maybe 5 or 6 of them, I don't know. Okay, when it comes to exam, this is where these students can be excluded, or can be, we can say, will become the next drop-off. They will just cut out, or they will not pass their exams. And the reason is because they can't, because maybe they did not finish their exams, maybe because they were struggling trying to read word by word and sentence by sentence. Okay, even though they can be very clever, they can be missed out. So either maybe you're a principal, maybe you're a team leader in the school. I want to encourage you people, and I have applauded this, that it is best when we are preparing for exams that we consider these students. I have attached here a recommendation letter to the examination office as an urgent need for a student with albinism. So in order to get this approval, you can also use your doctor. And I know for our islands, sometimes the general nurses and the doctors may, or nurses may not be able to do this, but let's be mindful, or we should be mindful. So students with albinism, or one student where we got albinos, him or they will really struggle if they are reading from A4 paper that is of white color. White is not a good color for students with albinos, because white reflects a lot of light. Okay. Therefore, if you are preparing teaching and learning resources plus assessment, a good suggestion for you is for you to print maybe a reading text for teaching and learning, or maybe for exam purposes on a colored paper. Usually it would be best for the students to choose which colored paper they prefer for their exam to be copied onto, or for their teaching and learning activities to be copied onto. But light blue paper is good. So light blue paper is one good one that I have used. So light blue paper, you can photocopy work for students with albinos on light blue paper, because light blue paper does not reflect a lot of light. Okay. And you can also make sure that the writing is enlarged. Suppose all your other students are using font size 12, students with vision impairment, and particularly with albinos, they will need to have their writing enlarged, or font size big, maybe to 14 font size. If you are typing it, this is the number we see on the computer. Increase the size of the writing for that little person to 14 or 16. But if you give it to them and they say it's too small, you must go and increase it again. Okay. Remember that before you give them the test paper, you do some sample of it, give it to them. Then whether they agree or disagree, you will adjust until they agree. Then you give it to them, because during the exam paper, it is them that they will be doing the paper, and not us teachers. And we cannot judge their learning until they can prove themselves by sitting our paper. Okay. For students with albinism, they can have little breaks, because of course they will strain their eyes. So if they look really hard at the paper, lift up their head, look really hard at the paper, it can be very, straining of the eyes can be time consuming, and so they need some breaks in between. And because they will need breaks in between, they need to have a bit of extra time, extended time. And the sitting positions where they are sitting in the classroom should not be where should not be the side of the classroom that receives too much light, because it will affect their vision seeing the board. They should be sitting where it's a bit dark, not too dark, not too much light, but just enough light so that they can read. Anything you write on whiteboard, if you're teaching using a whiteboard, forget about students with albinism. They will not relate with the whiteboard. They will not, their eyes, it is not friendly. So if you're writing on the whiteboard, of course, it takes a lot of time, resources, but you will need to photocopy their work on light blue paper and large writing and give it to them. This can be both for teaching and learning and as well as exam. If you are planning to give, if you are planning to give any work that you need to write on the board, remember that day one, they will need to be photocopied. And of course, what will happen is that they will be listening and they will be really concentrating, maybe taking a lot of your explanation just through their ears. But if they're working on paper, they need it on a light blue paper. If you have, if you are teaching up to 7 and 8, if you are teaching up to 7 and 8, you may want to have, if you have any relatives, I'm just sharing this, if you have any relatives that is an adult or going up into high school, they can have their computer, if they are using computer and accessing online, then you can ask the IT to switch the computer background color to black, and then they can access. This is for students with vision impairment. Okay, then let's go to dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is a learning difficulty, particularly to do with writing. Okay, but maybe when it is during teaching and learning time, maybe they can write through break time, they can write through lunch time because they are slow in the writing. But when it comes to exam and time is time, and because they will struggle with writing, it will also disturb them in their thinking. These are some of the things that you can do. You can find a separate examination room. You can appoint 2 supervisors. Why 2 supervisors? One will be watching that there is no, what did I want to say? There is no cheating. The other one, so that's the 2, then we can hire a scriber, someone who can write down the student's response. Remember that it's an exam, so someone who can write the student's response while the supervisors are watching. Or even if it's an exam, you can just record. They read the question, they answer orally, you record, you mark, and they will not lose out. It's not that because they can't write, then they get a 0. Or the other one is just pull out the main things you think that it will help them to get to the next grade. You can reduce the exam paper by just choosing some important questions, put it on the exam paper and give it to them. Of course, they will still pass it. Okay, dyslexia. Dyslexia is a difficulty for reading. So what do you do during teaching and learning time? Okay, dyslexia can be especially, I'll just give an example. So if one student is at grade 6 and can't be reading stories that are in the teacher's resource, pupils book supplied by the national curriculum. If the students can't read at that level, well, of course, we can say that they are dyslexia because they have reading difficulty. That is why they can't read the text at a grade level. Okay, so if we do have students at that level, if we have students in class 2, but don't even know their sounds, don't even know their blends, don't even recognize the high frequency words, and can't even read at the level of a class 2, then they can also be dyslexia. Okay, for those people, we can, if we are doing exams for them, okay, if we are creating exams at a class 6 level, definitely they will not engage because already they are not at that level. The only thing at the end of the paper is you will give them a 0, or I will give them a 0, or as teachers, we will give them a 0. But it doesn't mean that they are not learning. They've been learning. So for dyslexia, we can we can give another separate exam paper, something at their level with the knowledge question, with the comprehension question, maybe with one application question, maybe not the full Bloom's taxonomy, but we can still give people with dyslexia a space for them to prove themselves, but except that we need to work extra and provide a same paper, but reduced to their level. Maybe the spelling words will not be all the spelling words, maybe just 5 that you believe is they could do it. And I've done this with students at my school, and it does work. Of course, they will be graded according to their level, and it's comment reports according to their level. It is definitely unfair for us to assess people even when we know who they are, and yet we just do it just because we do it. So you can, with people with dyslexia, text used for reading during reading comprehension should be within the student's reading level. If there are 5 of them in your classroom, okay. Allow extended time for students to complete their assessment or even for classroom tasks. Reduce the number of assessment items or classroom tasks for these students. If they struggle reading already, of course, they will not be able to function that 10 comprehension questions. Maybe reduce it, okay? Use or add pictures into the text to help them understand, okay? Or maybe read aloud with them, okay? Allow students to learn high frequency words, word syllables, rhyming sounds, phonics, to help them handle the text. Okay, and the last one that I have included is for deaf people. We can use large print. I know I've put in Braille, but definitely there are no Braille, and no one here at Teachers College taught sign language, but maybe we will get to that extent. Okay, so this week and last week, for your information, this week and last week was our special ed week, where we think of ways to support students with okay. So if we have some of these students in our class, that please spend time. I know it's too much work, but everyone has the right to education. Everyone has the right to get assessment reports or end of term reports. And of course, as teachers, you will report according to their level. Okay, and I believe you have read a lot of the information that I have uploaded. Okay, so this is just a small presentation I did on students with special needs, but there are reading interventions. There are also phonics and phonological interventions. And this is one of the biggest challenge I see with students. As a teacher like you all, as soon as they look at a word, they know if they can talk about it, except that they can't read it. And if you have students like that, just check the ABC. Do they know the individual letters, 26 letters of the alphabet? Do they know the sounds? Yes. Could they blend? Yes, do a checklist. If you have students struggling in your schools, you can do a very simple checklist, such as check the letter sounds. Can they recite it? Do they know to say it? Can they say the sounds? Can they make blends, such as ba, a, t? If they don't, we teach it, okay? Then maybe syllables. Then introduce high frequency words. Those are a must, because I think one of the biggest contribution to dyslexia or the difficulty of reading is just that one little part there. But of course, there may be other contributing factors. We're just sharing here. And so therefore I have uploaded really good readings on activities on information or content that you can do with students who struggle with reading. It is best we addressed it earlier during our teaching and learning, other than we wait and write a report upon their performance after a summative assessment. Okay. Okay, so that's about it from me. Oops, yeah. Gone quite over time. Any questions anyone has that maybe I have an answer to? If not, I am here to tell you that the formative assessment, part A, assessment task 2, part A, we only have 2 people submitted so far. But next week, Sunday, is when this summative assessment should be due. So I kindly ask people to communicate, please. Otherwise, it can be a bit, we can be sometimes unhappy when we don't communicate. But some people are very good at communicating, and I really appreciate you people communicating. Just to mention that this summative assessment creation should be uploaded by Sunday. Okay, so for this one, you just create all the details in the assessment guide, and then that should get you full marks or some marks. Okay, everyone, are you all okay for me to say bye? Or
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Any others, please unmute your mic and maybe let Dorian for 5 minutes. Anyone has any burning questions? Okay. May Tari, you okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, May. Anna on the island of MI? Anna Keller? Regina, are you okay? Regina, unmute your mic. I can see your mic. Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Simo. I'm fine. I'll be submitting my summative along with my formative. Thank you.
Okay, unmute your mic. And Liman, where are you heading? Okay, there's someone behind Liman. Liman, you okay? Unmute.
I will my formative on Tuesday. Thank you.
No, you will not yaman. Okay, I can see someone from Malamba there. Mr. Wensi. Can we hear some update? Are you okay? Following?
Yeah, we are trying some effort to follow in. Still some setbacks, but we're trying to cope.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Stephen, I've seen Stephen this yesterday. Stephen got into school like, wow, very early. That's why I said, okay, Stephen, we have to arrange for a Zoom. It's urgent to arrange for a Zoom because Stephen came to school. Otherwise, thank you to my whole family. You've like had one good weekend. Tambah yung historian mo. Bami no come next week. Next week, Amy. Okay, no, I think Bami come next week, la Friday pa again. Do you check Amy no? You're right.
Yes,
Right.
by Moko Dolson.
Okay. Ale, you've like work la formative here. What is summative? Suppose si fast little bit yet. Message ka. Suppose next week la Friday you historian pa again. And week 13 yan. You historian pa again. Week 14 you put every something together. After you mean. Sare mo in blokos yan na.
Okay. Mrs. Simo, thank you.
Yes,
Okay, I'll
Thank you,
submit
Los.
mine this weekend.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you, last session of the day.
Thank you.
You
Thank you,
check
Mrs.
him all PC man back again. Hello, Anna.
Mrs. Simo, can I ask one last
Problem,
question, please?
Yes, please. Who is speaking? May.
Maylin from Kamewa.
No,
Okay.
from Kamewa.
Okay, but we can't see Maylin. Maylin is
Yes,
offline.
yes.
Okay, Palen.
Yes, just an apology. Last Zoom, we have mistakenly hit about the due date for the assignment 2 for the formative. We thought it will be due on 26. That is why we do not submit. But we will submit this weekend. And a question.
26 is this weekend.
Alright,
Yes.
this weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Palen.
Yes, about the individual form. If we assess a student, can we type our comment, or you prefer us to write and then scan and send you?
Oh, yeah, that's.
Yes, good question. Or that you can either write and scan, or you can type it and send. But no more work close to 10 where you make a test lamb. You like I said. From by you mean write them assessment task. Yeah, we create that formative assessment task, whether it's a reading or writing. The students will do that assessment. That after you mark it, you scan it, you put it together with your other parts and then send it. That is one very important one that we have to capture when we are compiling our formative. When we are compiling our formative, we can fill in that, we can type on the computer our report, and we can enter the score of the student on computer by work student by no cycle computer.
Okay.
You scan.
Yes, you scan it.
What about if I'm doing a listening and speaking, and I only do checklist?
Okay.
I only tick.
Okay, if you only tick, and that will be typed, but for listening and speaking, yeah, for anyone listening and speaking activity, response with ini start out, you will have to write. Yes, you will have to write. You will have to write down every single word that the student. Also, mimi service student respond also.
So, excuse me, we have to write out everything and scan.
Especially for listening and speaking. For listening and speaking, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm ready to submit mine, but this time I have to write down everything that the child says.
From Tahemi respond, Emi talk. Yes?
Okay. Yes, so that means I'm not going to submit mine this weekend, excuse me, because I didn't write.
The students respond like 3 only.
Excuse me, Mrs. Simo.
Yes.
I typed the comment, I typed everything to send, but I didn't write down what the child says or reads after listening.
Okay, well,
so I have to do it on Monday. And then I submit it by Monday afternoon.
Why? The student will come and talk again to you.
Yeah. But what happened if she retells everything?
Retells everything.
I mean the text, sentences, the phrases. Mine is listening and speaking.
Yes. Well, she will respond to your question. Did you create some question?
No, it's listening and speaking. She retells the text, or he retells the text. Retell.
Okay.
Is it okay?
Okay, so it's just retelling the text, and if the student is telling the text, you will have to write it so that I can see. I can see what the student is. Yes, Steven?
Okay.
No, I think that I think it's not possible for the student to say the whole thing. I think some of the main things only will be.
Yes, yes. But you must write an every something with student Italian.
Okay.
Yes.
The whole thing. I think experience is some few things only. I think.
Okay, Maylin. So what Steven is saying here, because yes.
The phrases are, the lower levels, maybe 3 or 4 sentences in one phrase in one sentence, 2, 3, 4 phrases.
Good. That is the interesting part. That's good. Good. Yes.
Mhm.
Just write those phrases down, and then that becomes the evidence of the student's performance.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, straight all family.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Los
Thank
Session,
you.
Mrs. Simo.
Okay, thank you. Good weekend, everyone.
Good
Thank
weekend.
Thank
you.
And
Nice weekend.
nice weekend, Louis. Nice weekend.
Yes, weekend.
Rini, nice weekend. Okay, tabla Emma, nice weekend.
Nice weekend, everyone.
Okay, nice weekend. Nice weekend, Alina.
Nice weekend, everyone.
Nice weekend, everyone.